Good afternoon, my name is Prokop-Dorner. I'm happy to present to you results of exploratory study designed and conducted by an international team consisting of researchers from Croatia, Czech Republic, Finland, Italy, Malta, Hong Kong and Poland. The aim of our study was to understand the views of the participants on barriers and facilitating factors related to being evidence-based in the conduct of research. We applied a qualitative approach and conducted 4 focus group interviews with participants of a training school. Our study participants represented varied professional backgrounds and came from different countries. Among 23 study participants, there were medical doctors, physiotherapists, dentists, dietitians, psychologists, pharmacists, biostatisticians, and midwives. The study participants declared different prior experience in regard to implementing principles of evidence-based research. Majority of them declared applying those principles in research, and every third had some experience in working on systematic reviews. Each interview was conducted by 2 moderators in English according to a common interview script. The script covered questions about participants' experiences with practicing evidence-based research, perceived application of systematic reviews, as well as experienced obstacles and received support when being evidence-based in their work. Finally, the study participants were asked about the ideas of how the difficulties in practicing evidence-based research could be overcome. All group interviews were audio recorded and transcribed. We coded the gathered material inductively and applied constant comparison technique in order to identify patterns within and between participants and study groups. The analysis was conducted with the help of MaxQDA 2018. The gathered material enabled us to identify 3 categories of barriers and 6 facilitators of applying evidence-based research in professional activities. I'd like to present to you our findings with some quotations illustrating the observed patterns. To start with the barriers. During 4 interviews, study participants discussed problems of lacking knowledge and negative attitudes toward evidence-based research, contrary interest of involved parties, as well as consequences of lacking resources. One of the study participants of the 3rd interview positively commented on the observation shared by another interviewee from another country. He said, "Yeah, I think it is similar in the clinic. There is no interest in evidence-based research actually. Orthopedic surgeons, they want to do the trials, and they have some publication pressure, and it's the problem too. So they sit there and conduct new trials and start reading about systematic reviews, what they actually are. So I think this is very common to do trials in clinics in Germany, and as well little interest in other approaches. That's what I've experienced." Some study participants talked also about a low recognition of the significance of evidence-based research in their national contexts, and a little number of individuals interested in that approach across countries. A person interviewed during the 4th interview said, "Actually, in my country, the medical societies don't know much about evidence-based medicine." Study participants addressed also university curricula and students' motivations. On the one hand, some interviewees talk about students' lack of interest in being evidence-based. On the other, many participants were of the opinion that there is an insufficient coverage of evidence-based research in the study programs. One of the participants contextualized early career researchers' problems in being evidence-based by referring to the structure of PhD programs. For example, in the academic fields as assistants, according to new law of academic development in our country, they have 4 years working contract. For this time, they are obliged to develop the PhD and to defend it successfully. At the same time, we have the problem with combining the time with other responsibilities, including clinical work, and this leads to underestimation of the importance of the research skills. They even present some PhD defenses where all the stuff was just a statistical report without any input on the research. This is a problem that we don't have a common ground to build these research skills. Some study participants mentioned also the low teaching competences and the lack of well-educated supervisors, providing possibility to consult encountered dilemmas by students and PhD candidates. Another group of barriers concerned the nature of work on systematic reviews and the resources needed. Time and human resources were the most crucial lacking resources discussed in all 4 groups. Various settings, which participants referred to when sharing their experiences, enabled us to learn about common difficulties in being evidence-based in various work contexts. The interviewees working mainly as clinicians talk about difficulties in finding additional time to search for evidence-based information. One of such participants explained, "I think that the barrier that concerns me the most is time constraint. Because as I am not an academic, I need to combine proper searches with my daily work and do my daily work outside my consultations. And these things I am doing in my free time sometimes." Also, researchers employed on universities experience time constraints. Some of them mention time as the main obstacle to be evidence-based at work. One of the interviewees during the second focus group said, "In order to be comprehensive and to really be evidence-based in a more extensive way, not just rapidly, you need a lot of time and all the university's constraints, like working on university or preparing paperwork, let's say administrative tasks. It is all taking time." During 2 of the interviews, study participants talk also about lacking human resources. Interviewees mentioned having too few co-workers and lacking information specialists involved in work on systematic reviews. One of the participants said, "I think nobody of our bosses think that we need some support. They think we are young and we can't do anything about it." During the same focus group, another participant complained about lacking an information specialist when working on systematic reviews. She said, "I think having an information specialist is the most important thing. We don't have any and we have to manage ourselves, and it is challenging many times." The issue of finances available has been discussed as well. Some participants saw it as the main barrier for evidence-based research. Others presented more optimistic perspective, which could reflect the national differences. Moreover, the access to databases has been discussed as a missing resource during 3 interviews. During one of the participants said, "For me, the paywall is still very hard sometimes because there are articles, systematic reviews that I would like to have access to and I still don't. Even Cochrane is still behind the paywall. It is good that Open Science Framework is starting to eat at the wall." The final barrier in this category was of linguistic character. Some study participants assessed linguistic skills of their team members as insufficient for conducting systematic reviews. Many people think that they have good knowledge of English, which is actually not enough to use the literature, to interpret the literature. The study participants talk about contrary interests of researchers and clinicians or other parties ordering expertise or recommendations. Depending on the particular work context, study participants talk about conflicts of interest with various types of orderers, ministries, public agencies, hospitals, and so on. One of the participants developing expertise in area of HTA mentioned the pressure from the politicians. I'm working at the ministry and we are preparing reports long time and policymakers don't care about research because they need it immediately and preparing research takes time, preparing reports takes time and sometimes they don't look at reports. Other interviewees saw the expectations of the orderers as hindering for the process of working in evidence-based manner. One of the interviewees said, "We are working for the health insurance fund, who wants to make decisions at the time point, so they need our input to do that." A further barrier for conducting evidence-based research are the formal requirements for academic achievement operationalized with a number of publications. The demand for high number of publications hinders researchers' involvement in time-consuming systematic reviews. The following quotation from the third focus group presents the exchange of experiences between participants on this very topic. "Quality doesn't matter, only quantity. So sometimes even if we really wish to, they press you. Doesn't really matter what's in. The number of publication is important, money. Because the number of publication is vital for your academic achievement, not only, also for university. Yeah, for that. For assistant professor to professor and so on. And not quality, so you can have salami publishing and nobody will care. You have enough papers." As for factors facilitating being evidence-based, interviewees' experiences varied. The facilitators that we identified are support from the institutions, recommendations from mentors, help from information specialists, available tools, international cooperations, and participation in trainings. While some of our interviewees in their workplaces experience neutral attitudes toward being evidence-based or get support in one workplace, like university, but don't get it in other, like in hospitals, some of our interviewees encounter a great appreciation of their work according to evidence-based principles in the national setting. One of the participants from Estonia quoted at the top of this very slide encountered this kind of appreciation. During gathering data, 3 of our interviewees pointed at inspiring role of their supervisors, who encouraged them to follow evidence-based principles and offer them opportunities to develop their skills in that area. Moreover, help from information specialists and access to databases were perceived as important resources facilitating evidence-based work. Moreover, some study participants perceived international cooperation as a crucial facilitator of being evidence-based. Internationally developed tools, international research projects, trainings organized for an international audience promote being evidence-based and enable development of competences also among those researchers whose local setting remain reluctant toward evidence-based research. Many of the interviewed researchers have experienced various forms of international cooperation connected to evidence-based research themselves. For example, the participant of the second focus group said, "I am doing research, different types of projects, which are mainly funded by international organizations like European Commission or other type, like of big pool of money. And there is a structure for research projects, which are generally conducted by international rules of collaboration. And I think this type of work is also facilitating evidence-based research. Let's say because in other countries it is more developed, so then you are also motivated to do more. Another benefit from international collaboration discussed are individual relations between researchers from different countries. Some of the study participants talk about various kinds of support they received from their colleagues from abroad, from a piece of advice to access to databases or access to free publications. Finally, some of the participants declared having support from cost action. Many study participants pointed at the training school that they've been just participating as a significant stimuli for developing their competences. One of the interviewees summed it up by saying, "With this training course, we have now more tools to do this in a faster way." Participants of our focus group interviews came from international academic contexts and various fields and levels of mastering evidence-based research. Their experiences varied in regard to the extent to which they are evidence-based at work. However, they shared some of the obstacles in following evidence-based research principles. The most important barriers discussed during all 4 interviews regarded a low awareness of the significance of evidence-based research on universities, in hospitals, medical associations, or public institutions, as well as the lack of sufficient coverage of this concept in university curricula. Study participants from various work contexts encountered expectation compromising the evidence-based approach. Finally, the majority of our interviewees find as problematic some resources, such as time, money, human resources, or technical resources. The study participants suggested that additional funding for systematic reviews, introduction of a requirement to conduct a systematic review as a justification for new scientific inquiries, and the development of educational strategies to promote the evidence-based approach could enhance the position of evidence-based research in a medical discourse. Thank you all for your attention, and some special thanks to our colleagues for their engagement in our study.